The stream is live.
The stream
Live.
is live.
Banter.
And we're bouncing.
Yeah.
It's the Sometimes stream, talking about the first arc, Autumn. Got another arc in planning, Winter, because it is cold AF. How y'all doing?
It's brick
How's everybody
outside.
tonight?
Did you say
Nice and-
brick?
Yeah.
Nice and brick.
Nice and brick.
Has none of y'all ever heard someone say that?
I have heard that. It was very funny to imagine. I just pictured this guy like Mario, like there's just bricks floating.
I
that's
didn't.
how
I
cold it is.
didn't hear that. I've never heard that. So that's an exciting new one for me.
It's a New York oldie. NYC
I like
oldie.
it. I went to school up at in Rochester, so which is replete with bricks. It is a brick-based place. So snow and bricks coming together just sort of weirdly makes sense to me.
You know, I can see a brick right now because my building's made of them.
Is there a
There's
wee
a brick right
plumber
there.
man
It's coming through
jumping
the
upon it?
window.
Oh, that'd be bad.
Yo, what if a brick just like came through my window?
Terrifying.
You ever need foam props of any kind? Just let me know. I'll make it. You'll have it. Then you'll have a brick, and it'll be
Thank
wonderful. Yeah. I guess while we're waiting for Jeff to get back on, how's everybody's night going?
It's good. You know, I'm excited to talk sometimes things, and
Yeah.
you know, we're also wrapping up another Stillfleet book, and we got in a couple months another game coming out, which is going to be fun. So the grid system's growing, and so there's a lot going on game wise. So just working away at the old game factory.
Game Factory, mining for content in the content
Exactly,
mines. Yeah.
Yep.
Working the dangerous machines at the game factory,
True.
making
Developing-
the random tables.
Yeah. My lungs are filled with like pieces of rock from the mining the games.
yeah, from all the dice.
I've got probability lung.
I'm also doing okay. It's been sort of a weird. It's December. It's December.
It's December. December is a weird month. It's just like this time before the holidays.
The
Hanukkah
other
already started, which is garbage.
we were gonna have Hanukkah on Sunday, and then Allison's on COVID, so we can't do that until she doesn't have it.
Here's to a speedy recovery.
Yeah, she's fine.
Yep,
She's
well,
just it's just a line
Oh,
of it.
COVID
She-
again? Did she already have it?
No, that was someone else, I think.
Your other wife.
Yes, that's a good point.
I'm sorry, that was my shadow wife.
Yeah, by the way, this is the secret family chat tonight.
Yeah. Secret family chat.
It's all
I,
about role playing.
I have to say also, in our house right now, we are currently watching, we just finished up The Haunting of Bly Manor, which I have never read and I've never seen. And apparently I accidentally reproduced a location and staircase from a thing that I have never encountered before. So that was very uncanny. It features an iron wrought spiral staircase as a main feature. And I was like, oh, well, I guess this is what happens when you like Edwardian architecture. It just sort of shows up in other things with living architecture.
Did you play the most recent Kirby game?
No.
I thought Kirby retired.
No, Kirby's around.
Yeah,
Kirby's working.
Wow.
I don't think they
Kirby's
pay
a
him very
working
well.
actor.
They pay him in food.
Baseball didn't work out for him, so he's back again.
Baseball did not work out for him. Well, in Star Racing. So in the most recent Kirby game, there's a whole thing called mouthful mode, where essentially rather than like eating a thing and becoming it, Kirby instead just like puts it in his mouth, but like not all the way, and then gains control of it. So like the first thing that you can mouthful mode is a car. You just like put your mouth around a VW Beetle, and then you can drive the Beetle.
Yeah, I'll post a picture. I got it.
Okay,
That's just how one drives, correct?
I
You
did,
try
yeah.
to eat as much of the car as possible.
Well, it's a game to teach kids how to drive, yes. And but one of the other things you can do is you can put your mouth around a staircase and like move the staircase around so you can climb up the staircase.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
It's it's like you can only eat the car, but it's a great diet because you can eat all the car that you want. Yeah. Wow. So yeah. Devouring architecture versus devouring.
He also can
architecture.
become. I didn't play the whole game, but he could also become a traffic cone. But for whatever reason, the traffic cone lets him pierce things. Which I don't really quite get why suddenly it would make the traffic cone sharp.
The conic idea is transferred to him, if not the properties of the cone itself.
Yeah, no, but literally not the property of the cone. It's more the idea of a cone. Like he becomes then a
Kirby,
cone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I cannot wrap my mind around how that would possibly work.
Can you wrap your mouth around it?
Yes.
I can't wrap my mind around
in the game.
Yeah.
So, since we're not doing Kirby the RPG, what is
it's a vor-based RPG, yeah.
Should we talk sometimes stuff?
Sure.
Yeah, I get to use my vor power. I had a vor power on my character.
Oh, you did?
Ethan wrote a whole cool power where essentially you can spend a ludicrous amount. I think it's like a D20 plus something of grit to call a giant beast to eat one of your foes. And essentially the power's like, it doesn't kill them unless they can't get out.
Yeah,
but essentially it's like
in real life.
Way. Yeah. Doesn't kill them. It probably kills them. Yeah, that's what is that? Summoning the Bizarcolak, I believe. That is
Oh, is it the Bizarcolak?
I think it's actually the shark. I think the Bizarcolak is the just does a ton of damage power. They're two different.
Oh, am I thinking powers. Of the Asterius Unlight then?
Yeah. I think Ben is referencing one I came up with that is basically a giant eat you alive shark thing. There's a couple like that are meant to be. I liked how you put the Bizarcolak power, Ethan. It's a Final Fantasy 3/6 power, right? And how do you do that in a system that is not designed for that? Maybe why would you do that is another question, but yeah, I like
why. I like a Hail Mary pass in a game.
It's definitely the shark because the power is called Jaws.
Yeah, that's a white power. I also was sort of I like the idea of a very powerful spell summoning some great beast, but in like interstitial, not even really interstitial, Final Fantasy style. The planet explodes or there's meteors attacking and there's no damage to the surroundings whatsoever, just the character you're attacking, versus something like Summon Clam, which will permanently alter the room, like a very low level thing will like, nope, sorry, that's now a feature of this space. Why the Bizarcolak doesn't destroy the space versus the Clam? It is meant to be talked about as lore for forever, hopefully.
Well, maybe the Bizarcolak doesn't want to.
The Bizarcolak way mysterious.
Well, I feel like when you get to sort of Bizarcolak level creatures, and I'm saying the word Bizarcolak, that's the first time I ever said it. But when you get to Bizarcolak level creatures, like you're sort of you're drawing from Lovecraft, right? Where it's like, you kind of can't understand them or what they are or what they want, and that's what's scary. Like it not only are they big and can do anything, but you don't know what they'll do or why.
It's also
Superman is a Lovecraftian creature too. Like
yeah, totally. He's like the Apollonian version of like the Lovecraftian Dionysian. He is the. That's why I like, what is it? Apollo and the Midnighter. The Apollo is the true monstrous form of that sort of like archetype character.
Yeah.
Solar powered, which is horrifying in and of itself.
Yeah.
Just like plants, which are also weird and scary.
Also strangely horrifying.
Realizing that Homelander is sort of written like Zeus.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, basically a jerk. Yeah, basically Zeus.
Zeus with significant mommy issues. So Zeus, I guess. Now that I'm saying it out loud. Yeah, that's yep. There it is.
Powers. Do we like the powers in the game? Are there powers you want to change?
Should we tell the viewing public like what this game is? Just to sort of
we should. Probably. If people if you're watching this and have not watched the other stream, this is a chat based on the
first one is why
the autumn campaign of the Sometimes Kingdom, our very first one, called the House of Eaves, and the Sometimes Kingdom is being built currently. I guess copy TBD further. It is being built as a retro fantasy set in the weathery world of Season's Keep. A world where magic is real and the dead don't die, and the default state of everything, given enough time, is alive.
Mm-hmm.
And like all the kinds of people who inhabit the world are like, not only are there humans, there are demons. I played a demon who have like weird, like legalistic rules and aren't allowed to use weapons. There's skeletons.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff was a skeleton.
I was a skeleton. Or
You
was
have a
I?
skeleton.
There's talking animals. Wythe was a talking animal. A skunk.
In addition to that, there are ghosts and various other spectrals, giants, and the Fae, who are the flip side of the coin of demons. Yeah. Character-wise,
everyone does magic. Everyone
does magic.
Everyone has magic spells.
You either, if your character class is a books major, then you are a practitioner of magic about magic.
Well, actually, skeletons don't have magic.
That's true. Skeletons can use magic objects.
Uh-huh.
And then most types of characters are forbidden from some kinds of magic, if not all, like skeletons.
So that's another question. So the powers, there's also the question of like magic system, and is that clear? Is that fun? Is the distribution of who's using what magic interesting? Maybe more relevant at higher levels is my guess right now. That at lower levels it's kind of like whatever. Everyone just has a couple powers. At high levels it'd be like, it's like a spec tree thing. But yeah, there's the hell of magic. Lots of skeletons. Ethan, you want to keep going with descriptions? Descriptors?
Sure. In general, the different kinds of peoples and species in it are, in addition to human folk, are drawn mostly from like the traditional antagonists of not necessarily mythology, but folklore, and other types of like genre fantasy in general.
I didn't think about it that way. That's interesting.
Simply sort of imagining like a post medieval world where those sort of original stories from Brittany and Arthuriana and the Matter of Britain never ended, but eventually all reached an accordance with each other, living in a fantasy realm.
Interesting. And then the thing we just did was a 4-part arc with essentially a haunted house that was haunted by a hauntier house. So it's like a meta haunted house mystery.
They built a haunted house on the burial ground of a haunted house that was made by AI to prevent haunted houses from having to use labor of the people who work in haunted houses.
Yeah.
And that was what we solved. Yeah. And then it
was a haunted house burial ground.
We made friends with the house under the house, and we killed the vampire who was using the house to do AI.
Did we kill him?
We didn't kill him. No. You defeated him, I think would be the most politic term for it. You reduced him down to shards and embers, little small bits. And then a really fantastic roll by White's character DCI Beans was able to capture him so that he could be brought to justice. Because what a creep. What an absolute creep.
Yeah, what a weird guy.
Yeah, just
so we think we're going to do some more episodes, and hopefully people like it. But that'll be in winter, because it is going to be winter. So we don't know what Ethan's planning, but we know it'll be physically the land of winter, where it's always winter. Where there's more skeletons. So maybe, Jeff, your character
more
will be
skeletons.
sort of taking the lead.
Yeah. And mark your calendars for Monday, January 8th. 22nd, February 5th, and February 19th, which will be the 4 episodes of the sequel campaign.
We're going to do 4 episodes again?
Oh, yeah.
That's what's on my calendar.
We could do something else, but we might do another 4 and then stop and see what we're thinking. It's a play test.
Yeah, it's a play test. I think it's interesting doing, I don't think that 4 weeks necessarily counts as a bottle episode or it is a mini campaign in the sense that it is not a larger sprawling narrative, which is partly why
you 8 hours of audio and improvisation.
That's for a lot of people. But it's interesting because it's like trying to showcase the idea of a new system of magic, new relationships between species, like a robust, like sort of social environment. The actual idea of Seasons Keep, which is the seasons are places. And so this past campaign took place in Copia, the Autumn Island. But of course, because it's only 4 weeks, having it also be sort of a haunted house crawl, like further contained it, so it's the additional challenge of like the parfait of trying to give like little snippets and sort of like a feeling of this world in the arrival stage coming into it, and then also like having it be possible with egresses to leave the haunted house when a player feels like it, and then they are on the lawn essentially of this like autumnal fairground. So I'm interested to like see how that plays out in a campaign in winter, which the working title so far is The Inexorable Doom of Literature, and will be more about town in one of the major cities in the winter island of Interhart. Mm-hmm.
That's where we go. Ooh,
it's so spooky.
We're going to learn more.
Like we're
going to learn what it is.
What is and how do. I guess I just sort of like, this is a not leading question at all, but like your general sort of experience with it, everybody here, except Ethan, is a pretty long experienced like TTRPG player. I guess my question is like, there's a certain kind of like ineffable tone and vibe that I'm trying to go for this world. We like sort of words like zany and wacky have been thrown about, but like, I guess I'm trying to get at something where there is like, I don't want to say like comedy per se baked into it, but there's a certain wryness to the world. But I kind of don't also want it to take away from the realism of a world with like laws and people and relationships and like tangible objects and stuff happening that feels like politically real to the world itself. So I wanted to sort of get people's experience with playing it from that angle.
I don't quite. So like what do you think the tone of it was in our opinion?
Yeah, what would you say the tone of it was? What was your sort of general feeling of the tone while you're playing it?
I was just playing like it was like I was in Undertale.
Cool.
I feel like it's the setting. I didn't get the setting until I read the book and then we played in it, where it's like, I was assuming it was going to be high fantasy in the like medieval style technology and social structures with J.R.R. Tolkien based characters, and it's not that at all. It's really a sort of, it's retro in that like, it's at least 20 years ago, probably 30 or 40 in terms of like the technology level and setting. Yeah. And the like vibe of like what would be on television. Like it feels like a 1980s sitcom or 70s sitcom in its like general way of communicating. And then you put all the fantasy objects and magic in it. So it's like, yeah, no, you're in like a tenement house, but you also have a flaming sword. And
but you can't use the flaming sword to pay rent.
Exactly. But everyone has a flaming sword.
Everyone has a flaming sword.
That's why you can't use it to pay rent. Everyone has one.
I think that to me is a clearer way to describe it, which I do think it makes sense. It's an early video game. It's like a video game we grew up with that never actually existed version of high fantasy, which is the kind of world where like both everyone has magic and there's powers, but also there's sort of the same tropes from like a Tolkien-esque, kings and wizards and many commoners or whatever. And so it's sort of unclear sometimes in a pleasurable way. But I think it's a question of how to translate that to the landscape of adventure in the theater of the mind for TTRPGs, because in a video game you're stuck in it. So when you're in the goofy town in Final Fantasy 3 and you talk to someone, it's like you don't have choice. You're just getting whatever information you're getting from them. But here you have to make certain assumptions about like, is this normal? Like when we ran into like basically a union dispute, which was awesome, first thing, but I don't think any of us knew that that would be the sort of thing we would be doing that Ethan had planned on. So
you said the words final and then fantasy, and I realized Final Fantasy has a pretty similar setting where it is sort of a more grounded world that we would understand how to live in, but with monsters and magic and fantastical like sword fighting.
Don't they drive a Cadillac in 15?
Yeah, it eventually gets to the point where you get a car and you drive around and there's giant people and you get really great outfits. And I haven't super played it, but I did see it like on a big screen in a Best Buy one time, so it looked really cool.
Yeah, someone like found that it looks like it is a Cadillac. It's like a Cadillac concept. It looks like a Cadillac concept car.
Oh, did they like plagiarize it?
We can't say that.
We can neither confirm nor deny.
We can't say that, but one of the first things I remember seeing. Well, the car was never produced, right? So did they play it? I don't know.
That's great. That's where it gets into like real gray areas of like, oh yeah, this is a concept that is,
and it's not a real car; it's a fake car.
And they ran it by a lawyer, presumably, to change just enough of the fins that it's.
Can you mod in the Homer Simpson custom car?
Of course. Actually, the Homer Simpson car would be if a player wanted to be a driver in the Sometimes Kingdom with
they should put that in Rocket League.
Car.
Yeah, I'm sad that none of us were a driver. That's such a funny class, and it's also like the second one in the book.
There's a lot of classes, as usual with the games Ethan and I make. I think are very maximalistic in all the ways. So one of them is, or maximalist, I should say, in all the ways. And one of those ways is options. And with this game, in some ways, because with fantasy, you're always automatically competing with like D&D. It's like, all right, so we have sort of somewhat fighter, wizard, thief, kind of classes. But then I love the idea that there's also just a bunch of journeyers, and one of those is just you have a car. Like it's like a cartoon car almost. It's like a magic car, but that is a cool power to have.
It's like a cat. It's a car that like Mickey Mouse would, or like Felix the Cat would drive.
It could be. Yeah.
I love Felix the Cat.
It's interesting hearing these sort of descriptions about like, I think part of it is like, I love the idea of like a cartoon fragile contrapulator style car being perfectly in balance with like, this is a beat up like 57 Chevy that like somebody souped up with an engine that they like put enchanted red steel into, like that. Both of those concepts could like be equally balanced in the same thing because it's magic and magic is free for all. I personally feel like with magic, as long as the internal rules of it are consistent, like trying to draw from as many possible aesthetics and like sources as possible, like is for me that sort of like really appealing part of fantasy. I was thinking about like that sort of like grasping for whether it's high fantasy or low fantasy. A friend of mine who knows a lot about genre fiction and comic book history and a bunch of other stuff. She had mentioned in reading stuff over that it sort of made her think a little bit of Venture Brothers, and I think Wythe, you had mentioned this also at some point. This idea where there is like a lived world with characters and people who have actual psychologies and actual histories and traumas, but it is sort of like every possible aspect of, in the case of Venture Brothers, like boys adventure fiction, is sort of like carefully delineated out and put in a place, to the point where like different versions of the same thing from different sources exist side by side with each other. And I feel like something like that is like really ripe for fantasy, because fantasy, like it is high, it's low, it's penny dreadful, it's Gringle, and I feel like stuff like CW TV shows or like low budget sci-fi shows like intuitively grasp this, and like I feel like comic books at their best sort of grasp this idea, partly simply because like all of those sources are public domain, but a lot of them aren't. And I feel like finding a way to have a world where like if this is a world where like there is a fictional history to it that is real, and maybe it's been drawing in like all different aspects of like Arthuriana, like from the actual stories to their like weird like what really happened in their world, with knights and giants and everything, trying to find sort of a way where like everything could like be potentially like possible and balanced out in a way that doesn't feel like totally overpowered or silly, but for the most part it's just sort of like an opportunity to explore those like tensions between like different parts of the same fiction.
Also, like the average long-running comic book character is like has radiation-induced superpowers, has been to space, has had their mind inside of a robot, is friends with Dracula.
Scare.
Yeah.
Because of the radiation-induced superpowers. No, has had a cancer, but also has had a cancer scare because of the radiation-based superpowers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's friends with Dracula, and like can like one time did magic.
Like, gotta be friends with Dracula. Gotta happen. So like for the Sometimes Kingdom, the simplest sort of like start to adventure is sort of taking sort of like what I used to call like the third hand version of a trope, where it's like you get into like ghosts, and by the time you're into the 80s, you've got the Ghostbusters, and then you've got like really obscure weird stuff that was out in the 80s. Like the Smurfs had the Auto Smurfers for one episode, so they could riff off the other cartoon show that was in the same block. Like
what was the tattooed teenage tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills.
Yes. You've got Tiger Sharks after Thundercats, which is a riff off of a lot of the the anthro artwork that came after Conan the Barbarian, which itself was a rip on blah blah. This idea that like all of these pulps are like nested in each other, and so at a certain point there's this sort of dullness and flattening, which is unfun, but like trying to sort of start mining that and like finding something weird and novel about it. And for me, a lot of the times it like winds up being like social and economic relations, and like sometimes people will get into discussions about like, boy, that really wouldn't work. Like there'd be like a huge labor dispute over that, and that's sort of like where I start lighting up. I'm like, oh my god, yes, absolutely. Like that to me, like sort of like how would a fantasy world filled with magic where all of these things are true possibly navigate its economy? Would it even have one? Like what would its government be like? If it has like, if it is got the trope of like, and Earth is like just around the corner, like through a magic door, or like, through portals or tears or rips, and like, well, how long has it been connected to Earth? In what ways? What is its relation to Earth's fictions? And then also like, has there been sort of trading? What do they think about those economic systems? Like how their economic systems influence each other?
Is it sort of like that episode of Webster where Webster like goes aboard the USS Enterprise and like takes a tour of it with Worf, and then but like wouldn't he come back and like do everything he could to make the world like that?
Yeah. I like that. I don't think I've never heard of that, and now
it's real. They did it on the set with the costumes and everything.
That is amazing.
So is that why? Is that why Webster caused the Contra?
Wait.
Is that why he did it? Because he knew it would lead to Starfleet to Starfleet.
Do what now, Jeff? What did Webster do?
Is that why he did the Contra? Is that why he caused the international incident?
It's a chain of pearls from one incident to the next.
Are we saying that Webster did Iran-Contra?
Did he set up the deal with the Contra?
Yeah, well, he clammed up in Congress when they brought him in.
I mean, with the...
Yeah, that he did because he thought it would lead to Starfleet.
Famous accelerationist Webster.
Are you confusing Webster and Oliver North or whomever?
No, they're...
I've never seen them in the same room.
80s television legend.
I don't know.
Webster sitting in a room with a gun with Oliver North sitting across the room with the shades drawn at the Susie Motel. Here's what's going to happen.
I do think that this kind of talk is exactly what sparks like the plot of any game of a Stillfleet system game.
Yes.
That's the idea.
What if Webster did Iran-Contra to accelerate us to become the future of Star Trek?
That's our next game. After maybe that's the tagline for Sometimes Kingdom. It's Sometimes Kingdom : what if Webster did Iran-Contra with magic? And everyone just has to figure out.
Everyone's like, yeah.
What are we trying to sell? Yeah.
I was thinking of riffing off of the one of the title slugs for a Futurama episode that happened in the 2000s, and it's like, you can't prove it didn't happen, and that just sort of being the general vibe of it. It's like, it's not just secret histories, it's every secret history.
His head did that. I'm convinced.
It did just do that, yeah.
Yeah, it just did that.
So, yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to balance from a player perspective, because a system where literally anything and everything can happen all the time is essentially Magic the Gathering, which is both cool
and also no thank
lame.
You.
It's also hard. I will say from it opens up mechanical possibilities because you could be like, I'm a character from J.R.R. Tolkien, and then someone else is like, I'm Optimus Prime, and you're like in the same IP or whatever, like Phyrexian Optimus Prime, whatever they'd reskin it as. But I think one of the problems is like, how do you, as a storyteller, tell stories in that world, or maybe not problems?
And how do
but,
you keep it from becoming Ready Player One?
Right.
Yeah, or almost
I think I think one of the possible solutions is to sort of, I feel like the great thing about a world, and my hope for Seasons Keep and the Sometimes Kingdom in general is that like it is a framework and a world that like maybe has its own gravity, and that like the idea of like people jostling to try and like make the seasonal system of Magic work on top of like the places being seasons, and there's like weird tensions in the Magic season and with the islands themselves, like that, like those ideas could sort of then kind of be refracted and bent. And like if somebody wanted to play a character that was reminiscent of that, like in adapting a character like that to the world itself, it winds up going through like a bunch of these changes. And I don't just mean like aesthetic or stylistic changes, like hopefully in taking that idea and finding a place for it, like in the world, that sort of act changes them in a way that grounds them and limits them. And also like opens up these like additional possibilities of like, okay, what's extra weird or unseemly or interesting or something that hasn't been explored about that particular character or that archetype or whatever like little corner of a genre that it came from.
I mean, so it makes me think of, we did an episode on Dungeons and Drama Nerds. I'm on a podcast called Dungeons and Drama Nerds, and it's essentially an actual play podcast, but every other episode is like dramaturgs talking about the dramaturgy of role playing games, and because we're all dramaturgs, and it's fake. That's not real.
The word dramaturgy?
It's real, but it's not. It's like a job that very few people have. I would say that probably like 1/12 of the dramaturgs working in America are on our show, if I were to guess. But we did an episode about genre and about like genre agnostic things specifically. There are, I mean, in theater, particularly with a lot of classic theater like Shakespeare, people try to do it with a different genre. Like, oh, let's do the greaser version of this. Let's do the like 1980s version of this. Let's do the modern day version of this. Let's do that, et cetera, et cetera. When you think about like, actually, if you're doing Shakespeare, if you're doing it in like the way they did it, you're also doing like the Elizabethan version of it, which is itself sort of a like setting for it. And usually his things were set hundreds of years before his own time.
Right. How convenient,
right? Well, and they're also based on other stories, right? Like he did not write a single. The only original story he wrote was The Tempest, and that shit was still based on a news article. But
wait, he was the Dick Wolf of his time?
Yes, absolutely, he was. And but there's this sort of idea of like using genre as a crutch versus using genre as a very specific like part of the text. Like this thing has to exist within the genre. And I do think that a strength of like both Stillfleet and the Sometimes Kingdom is that the powers as written are very specific to the kinds of things you can be and the kinds of places you're going to be in the game. Like, they're restrictive in a way where it's like, no, if you're using this power, it's pretty open story-wise, but it's open story-wise in a way that works in this universe. Like, just like Jaws, the power where you have like a giant land shark suddenly eating someone. Like that makes sense in a crazy fantasy world where like, oh, a giant beast.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I think that gets to like, this question is one of the genre of retro fantasy, and like that's something that is, to Ethan's point, it will become apparent if enough of it exists. It's like a chicken egg thing. If we do it enough, then it's pretty obvious. And until then, I think it is helpful to find these like things to hang one's hat upon, like certain kinds of video games, etc. But yeah, maybe that's something also to talk about, are things that seem to really stand out in that 4-part arc as Sometimes Kingdom-y in a good way. Like I thought haunted houses and the unionization of haunted houses felt very appropriate, even though this is like the first real like playtest we've done of it. It was like, oh, of course that's what's happening now. But I don't know if there's other things that you liked particularly. Like I feel like the skeleton demon brother thing, that was like a fun, like, okay, this is a world where that is sort of normal-ish, question mark, like not too abnormal.
It's a wacky situation that to the world is normal, and so yeah, the players we can have fun with it being kind of silly.
Yeah, just nonsense. Like before, I guess people were more afraid of changelings, like having your kid switched out for another kid way more often, right? For some reason, that was just happened to be I'm assuming based on the stories about it, that was a fear people had, maybe.
It's a fun little folk tale.
Yeah,
and I guess like that was also an explanation for like the extremely high infant mortality rates, and you didn't have a good way of thinking about like medical, all kinds of like things now we'd medicalize as like, oh, you have a psychological disorder, like, I don't know, like postpartum depression.
Now we could just say your kid has bad vibes, and it's not your fault if you leave.
Oh,
and
that's
or, yeah, just not
terrible.
liking
Take
babies,
these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has anyone read Changeling or by Victor Laval or seen the adaptation? It's very
The Angelina Jolie one, or
no, it is a current TV show that is very good. It's all.
Oh, with
Not
Lakeith Stanfield.
Yeah, Lakeith Stanfield, who Kelly Marcel created it. It's who else is in? Anyway, it's all good people. Dina Porter. It's very good. But yeah, no, I think that's interesting to think about. What if some of these myths were true? Although it's weird because it's also, there is some science and there are like cars, so I think that's always been a part of the game we're figuring out, like how much do we know about real Earth, which I have no idea, but I don't think any of us are Reggies, right? None of us have been to real Earth.
I don't believe based on what you've said about your characters, I believe that Erica's character Bessemer is a little bit Reggie in terms of knowing its pop culture and being obsessed with its pop culture, but it's never been to Earth.
See, that's interesting because I don't know what that is.
So the
My
idea behind
would not care.
Not in the slightest.
Actually, you would find Earth boring. Actually, I would assume.
Your dead do what? Where? This is awful. Why am I here? The idea behind Reggie is that the Earth is called the regular world. It's not necessarily a world where magic can't happen. I think the mechanical idea I'm throwing around for it is that magic operates differently on Earth proper. And if you want to do stuff that is like strictly Seasons Keep style magic, it is much harder. So it's got its own sort of like classifications, and you can do things called techniques. You can do techniques magic like a little bit easier there. But the idea is that the regular world is the Earth. It's sort of like the sister world to Seasons Keep. It's sort of left ambiguous, like, are the stories from Earth from Seasons Keep? Are the things happening in the Sometimes Kingdom and the Seasons Keep, are they sort of like a weird echo or a mirror of the stories that happen in Earth? Do they share like folklore? Is folklore true? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So are the islands of Seasons Keep sort of like an Atlantis style location?
Sort of. We can get I'll just spend 2 seconds. Oh no, go ahead.
This is, this goes all the way back to Tolkien. He said the same thing, I believe. There's a lost history, Forgotten Realms and D&D, Ed Greenwood's thing. This is just an alternate. There's actually the others. This, what did he say? It's like it used to be part of Earth and it was cut off or something like that. Or is a mirror counter Earth?
Yeah,
I
it's
love all
been
that
fantasy
stuff.
for a long time.
It also feels very what if in a comic booky sense of like the alternate ideas,
Is it like that map where you like go through Antarctica and then there's like more Earth on the outside and it's big and flat?
I think the idea generally is that it's just sort of said in a couple of sentences of like the one-page backstory of how Seasons Keep like came to be Seasons Keep. Is that there were different lost places that came together and formed a series of islands, and that sort of the agency of it is left ambiguous in what those places are. The names of the seasons themselves, which are now like in the schools of magic's names, like the Royal Thulisilian School for summer, for instance, like the island of Summerside was originally called Thulisil, and Thulisil is like if you cram together Thule and a couple of other places like Atlantis, and like you get a weird contraction. So there's like a little bit of an echo of that like in the name. I think I don't want it to be super literal. The way I've sort of described like the world itself is that it's sort of like it's a collage or like a bricolage, or it's sort of like instead of being like a lost or secret world, it's like a lost and found world, like it is like a rainy day scrap pile, and it's sort of turned into a place over time. So like that idea of like that aesthetic or artistic idea of it being like a little bit abstracted and not necessarily fully concrete, I feel like there's going to wind up being some tension, because I know that people who play games like really like thinking about like a grounded space with a map, and that map having like a general one-to-one place, but like starting off calling a realm the cartographer's curse, because assuming that people are going to want to make their own maps and own islands and come up with their own ideas for it. Like I kind of wanted to make something that was a little more amorphous.
I guess how do you get there?
How do you get there?
How do you get there, and how do you leave? Even if it doesn't make sense. Like Well, it's like, do you go through a wardrobe?
Yeah.
Yeah, and also
I like to think that there's
how do you get
ahead.
there from a narrative design standpoint? So if you
Right.
want people to make their own maps, I would say the easiest way, because now this is a move. Like we just talked to now I'm forgetting how to say his last name, Tyler Crumrine at PAX, but there are games where like making a map is the game, and I think there's I think more than one game I've seen that has some mechanic like that. And I know Tony with Blister Critters is really insistent on mapping, which is completely different, obviously, but the interior of suburban American homes, like in this kind of alt 90s, like,
yeah, that rules.
The humans have all died and the animals have taken over. So how do they sort of see, what is their psychic geography? Which is obviously
the
be
Dennis
different.
the Menace Nintendo game.
And so I think like that's a question of like, as a player, are we, when do you, Ethan, the game designer, want us, the players, to be mapping the world versus using touchstones where you're like, okay, Turnip, the city of Turnip is a place that's named, it is the Waterdeep equivalent or whatever, right? I'm making this up, but it's like a place where quests can be given and received, Brocadia, right? So it's sort of an interesting thing from a game design perspective of how much you want to, give away those resources versus like, give them to people under erasure. You know what I mean? Where like, and tell them like, please open this up, like redo this. We don't know what this is, which every game does to some extent. Forgotten Realms even implies, even with all the big gorgeous maps, that there's stuff just beyond the edge of the frame. There's more realms that have been even more forgotten. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. The forgotten or realms.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your more literal question, Ben, about like how do you get back and forth between the worlds, I feel like I think it would be fun to have it be like there are specific ones that like relate to like how the Sometimes Kingdom is going to operate in other media, like audio, drama, narrative, for instance, or like and then in addition to the game, I like the idea of that there are some people who are like this a small handful who are like powerful or have a weird enough power that they can shepherd people between those worlds in quotes easily as part of their vocation, and beyond
sort of like
that,
ex-journeyers who can teleport.
Ex-journeyers, yeah, like but a very specifically powerful class of ex-journeyers, the defenders of the realm, and then but beyond that, sort of any sort of like trope from like a wardrobe to a stitch in time or wrinkle in time to or like a rift or a porthole, like having all of those be possibilities, and then I'm sure there is some like civil service in Season's Keep whose sole job is to like try and contain those, because it's like, oh Christ, it's another like the Armor, like a forbidden Armor has shown up in like Argentina, like these kids, like we cannot let these kids like be involved in like time shenanigans, like they will screw everything up. They'll think that they're like royalists, and we'll have another regency period like in our past or something. So it's like that there is sort of like my favorite kind of thing of like haggard blue collar people whose job it is to like map like things that would be fantastical and absurd and wondrous to people from Earth, but to them it's just sort of like, oh shit.
What if I do kind of want to talk about before we end, I did want to talk about like mechanical.
Oh yeah, I'd love to hear that. Or talk about it.
Just to touch upon it, because like or not, I don't know. Should have had a more formal question.
Nah.
Yeah, like
the way the magic works is interesting. We didn't really get to it this time, but that would be a nice thing to do where we do have a playtest party where everyone has one. So in the game, the Sometimes Kingdom, each like magic practitioner, I guess you choose a school that you're part of, right? And that determines effects. So like summers can do like some people who are known for summer magic can do like wild magic surge. People who do winter magic can like cast from hit points. And I would like a future playtest to really not delve into, but at least show some of the
playtest it more.
I like that idea. I really like the idea of a playtest session where it is essentially like little micro events. It's almost like, here's the index card version of it. For the next 5 minutes, we're going to be running these ideas and trying them out. Then we talk about it a little bit and then move on to the next one, sort of like in rapid succession. I think that would be fun.
A fun little trick I sometimes do running games is begin with a montage, a character montage, where I essentially like tell everyone like prepare like the like thing you want to do, like whatever your character's like signature thing is, if it be it like a power or an ability or a like like an item they want to showcase, and like just tell me what it is, and I'm going to give you a scenario where you get to use it. And that's the like like you're doing the like getting the crew together montage, and like you get that moment for each of them in like a
son of a
2
bitch,
to 4
I'm in.
minute scene.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like, like someone jumps out a window that explodes and then rolls on the pavement and like runs down the street pursued by a phalanx of cops. Like that kind of like quick thing. And well, they got away. We cut.
Damn, they got away. Da-da! Yeah, and they're wearing a pair of boots with magical wah-wah pedals built into it. So every time they run, it goes waka chicka, waka chicka, waka chicka, waka chicka.
Every time I try to do a somersault, I'm afraid my neck is gonna get like cut at the base.
You got to do it
like you ever like oh, you could just roll on your shoulder. I guess you're right.
That's how you.
I'm gonna do that next time I jump out a window.
That's not how it goes.
Gonna roll. Roll for reality.
Yeah. You don't hear that in the background, right?
There was some siren a minute ago, but not right
now.
That
wasn't me, to be fair.
You're not a car?
Not this character.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Oh, another mechanical thing I do want to. Oh, I mean, I guess this is for afterward. I did want to talk about like how leveling up as a skeleton will work because I don't get spells. I was thinking like just having a tag system where some powers are magic and some are explicitly not magic but related to the domain. I think I would be good with that, but we have to come up with that. I think.
Yeah, I think that would be a really interesting thing to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, the one question with the magic is if everyone's getting spells and more spell options, if you're a castery class, and then if you're a skeleton, you're not getting the spells. Are you getting something else for that sense of balance? Or are you just like, well, the major trade-off is you're much harder to kill in some way? I mean, what are the mechanics that I forget what we sort of decided on a playtest, but there is enough going on now. There's a lot of spells. It is a fraught terrain trying to make a big, heavy magic game that isn't D&D because people are used to D&D, and or in my mind, there's also like a lot of rules-like games where magic is very, very, very simple and there's very few options, which has always felt like kind of lame to me. I'm like, then if there's going to be magic, like make it big. So I like, Ethan, that this is a game with a lot of magic. But I do wonder in terms of like the balance of who gets what spells and like are skeletons left out. I don't want to.
Magic is also way better when it's specific, where it's like you do this spell that does this thing, and then usually the problem you run into is, oh, none of my spells work for this scenario, and it's like that's where the GM has to give you a scenario where the spells are going to work for it.
Or you have to know that you're going to like break the world a little because like the thing you're doing does not make like you're forcing. It's the round peg square hole thing where like I was like, okay, I'll use lightning to blow a hole in the ground to get into the secret location, but like that's actually dangerous and like not ethical maybe, but I don't know.
We did it.
We did
it.
Yeah.
And it opened up dangers and complications and interesting scenarios, and it shortcut the entryway into the House of Eaves itself. But I feel like that was all perfectly within the parameters of the sort of spells and having kind of a yes and mentality about them. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't come up with the physical characteristics of the soil and the ground over, like I feel like that would have been like the ground wasn't an antagonist. Technically it was an antagonist, but not really. So it's like sort of allowing for that to happen explicitly because it furthers the plot. It's interesting. And then it adds, complications to everybody's like actions and like what happens next.
Yeah.
I feel like that sort of broadness to a spell is really, really great. But the specifics of like how it operates, what it looks like, what is the area that you can operate it upon, and then like what are the dangers inherent in it. I feel like those are good limiters to something like that.
I do wish we got into the train station.
Oh, the Marrow network, yeah. That would be cool.
I have a power that we could just enter the subway from anywhere. That would have been cool.
Well, am I right that will happen in the next go round?
It'll definitely happen in the next one. The Marrow network is run significantly through Interhart, the Winter Island. So there will be extensive ability to use that.
Because that's the bone train that skeletons can use.
Would you like to take the bone train? Yeah. I didn't think about it when I came up with it. I swear. I'm very naive.
It's a train made of bones. It's not a
yeah.
You
take the skelevator or the skexcalator down to the bone train. That's
Gotta make sure you get off the bone station.
The T in MTA stands for tibia.
Medial tibia. I
don't know an A about
the MBTA. It's actually called the Bone Train in Boston, but they just don't. They took all the signs down, but it's still legally the Bone Train. But
Metropolitan Bone Train Association.
Yeah, get on the Bone Train. You have to. Yeah, conductors still no.
See, a semantics quibble like that is absolutely how you would accidentally get to the regular world from Seasons Gate. You're just like, oh, we didn't take that one sign down. It's still in play.
What is it that you said? It's technically correct, which is the best kind of correct.
The best kind of correct, yeah. All demon rules operate on. It's a good place for like evil rules lawyering. It's a species specifically designed to do that.
But that's so fun in games where you do have a list of powers, and then you find a absurdly specific way you can use a power that it says it. It says I can do this.
Yeah, and I especially liked it felt very in line with like how demons are written, like to cast the fire spell, because it affects like a physical location, because the antagonist was technically a physical location, then it's stuck like a boil onto that character, and then cause the additional complications of it's shooting a column straight up, so it will create a structure fire in this building.
Exactly.
So like stuff is happening, like the actual like battle area is changing because of the effect, but then also it's like that is a location based antagonist, so that totally works. It's well within the rights of the spell.
I mean, I created sort of a hobbled character in the first place. I created a demon knight, and demons are not allowed to use weapons. So I was like, but what if I was a knight?
That makes your character much more chivalrous in the later century version of chivalry than actual knights. So
I sort of more thought he's an idiot who walks around in really heavy armor cumbersomely and like stands in front of people, and he's like, yes, come at me, and it's like, but he's stupid.
But also, I could just stab people. That's why I can stab twice, because I stab one for me and one for you. That's why I'd have the double stab power.
That's a really nice brotherhood right there. That's a really, that's a close family.
Because I also have double strike, but I have it crossed out because it says this power only works with melee weapons.
Yeah. I feel like that there should be a note in there, like if it came down to like, I don't know, you needed to build a house or knock a tree down or something like that, you would have double strike ability for anything non-combative instead.
Well, but that's not combat, right? That's that's using a tool.
You can hammer a nail twice as fast.
And that's a GM thing. I would be like, no, you cannot use the main class power. I don't know why you picked that class. That doesn't make any sense.
I am much more like, more gasoline on that fire that you made for yourself.
It does raise the question of like, should you, is that even an allowed thing? But I guess, Ben, you did it, so there's no reason to disallow it. It's just
you did it every future GM of the Sometimes Kevin will thank you, Ben, because... they'll be really happy that literally in the first playtest they did this. They picked someone who can't learn any magic for the Switch.
Binding, legal, and completely unbreakable.
I mean, I did play a thief who didn't have a body for years in a Stillfleet campaign.
That's true.
So
I love that. No, that's the sort of like, those are the kinds of like breakings that I get enthused about with a game. I was talking with somebody else who was playtesting and developing a character, and they really wanted to be a skeleton farer so that they could be a skeleton pirate, which is traditionally an antagonist, but they wanted it to be a playable character. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. I'm like, let me know how you decide to completely break skeletons so that you can do that, and we'll figure it out from there.
The skeleton can sail.
Skeleton can sail.
Yeah.
They can still use class powers.
Well, I think that's where we like people to hack this stuff anyway. So I think it's all about Ethan to some degree. What do we want to present as the thing that you're hacking? Like, what is the baseline that then people are like ripping apart and unboxing and making new things with? And that's always somewhat of a moving target as projects develop. But I think what I'm hearing is the classes and species are working okay. Magic, we probably need to just keep playtesting because there's a lot of ideas baked in, and we want to make sure that's like fun and not confusing or anything. But I definitely think the world, like how the relationship between the Sunrise Kingdom and the Regiverse, and maybe just the general vibe of like what are normal people like here are the things that we could still figure out how we're going to communicate in the book, in the ventures, so that when people pick it up, they like get your vision very quickly. Those are some things I'm kind of like thinking about here. And yeah, holy wow, my wife is streaming has some good thoughts.
That's a good point.
Skeleton sailors.
That's true. You could fit so much hardtack and swill in there for other people.
Yeah. Well, it's been almost an hour. I said I'd try to keep it to an hour, so we got a few minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? Anything we didn't get to? Any thoughts coming into if we're gonna play this again some more?
Yeah, is your wife streaming right now?
Yeah, so many questions.
So many questions.
Well, so their name is Holy Wow, my wife is streaming. Is implies currently doing it.
Yeah, you got a link? I mean,
but that
we
could
do
be a
a raid.
continuous, like, it is generally, not necessarily.
She could be a river.
That's true. Could also
could
be
be
24 hours a day streaming.
Yeah, I'm going to err on the running water theory, though.
Okay, well, we'll find out.
Find out.
It would be
next
so cool
week.
to change your username every time you log out to be like, my wife was streaming.
Yeah.
Oh, we have an
My
answer.
wife may stream again.
Wait. I normally only log in when she's streaming. Right now, my name is not accurate. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
What's she up to?
As a fake lawyer, you don't have to answer that, but now I'm kind of curious. Oh, what was that? That was pleasant.
That was my phone. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's okay. I think we now have to pay Nokia $1. Are there any sort of like parting thoughts or things that you'd like to see covered? I heard some really great suggestions about how to and what specifically to do some additional like think-ins and playtesting on in regards to magic spells. I know Jeff, you were also interested in talking more about items at some point. Which would be a great conversation to have because I love items in all their glory.
Well, rules for creating item, because like I was thinking one idea, instead of getting a spell, I would just get, instead of 2 spells, I would get a magic item, a limited use magic item or some shit like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But you would have to like make rules for like kind of like I guess tier for. Oh, we could talk about it later.
I guess what is this? Maybe here's a question: what waste does a skeleton produce, and would they turn it into an item?
A skeleton produces no waste, except for the food that just sort of drops through them when they eat and drink.
And missed opportunities. They're like, damn, that was a waste of my time.
But they do grow back bones if the bones get destroyed, right?
Yeah.
They can if they're healed.
We never confirmed that.
We never really talked about this. The general idea behind this. Yeah,
I never got hurt, actually. I don't think.
Yeah, you're like, bye, bye, everyone.
I only fucked up. But I also was the only one who fought. No, I guess everyone else fought technically, but I also fought the most.
It's very hard to hurt me. I got hurt many times, but without taking any damage.
Yeah.
I almost died, which was great, and I feel like that should be appropriate to the character I was trying to play, like an action.
Yeah, I also really appreciated that your character was like, I'm gonna go hang out in this office with this fox for a little while, and then come back around. I liked the idea of a dungeon crawl. You're just like, nope, I'm gonna be in the Bursar's office. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Well, there was a reason. It wasn't like I was fucking around. To be fair, like,
no, it's true.
I was concerned about the safety of everybody else. Because that was ostensibly what we were supposed to do.
Ostensibly. The tension between your mission and then what actually gets accomplished.
Yeah, but it was a fun group, and obviously we've now played the grid system a lot in a lot of different genres. We played a lot of fantasy games, obviously mostly sci-fi, but a lot of fantasy games. We've also played a lot of early modern horror, and now we're releasing this weird cartoon mutant apocalypse Blister Critters. So I got to plug blistercritters.com. Check it out.
Oh, you got the domain, sweet.
Yeah, I think it is cool to see how the Sometimes Kingdom is developing its own kind of grammar, its own logic, its own world. So yeah, I hope we get to release this game in the next year. And I think, Ethan, that's something after Kadita, once Kadita's like actually out, we can come back to kind of what is the quick start, what does the learn by play sort of look like.
Oh yes.
So very excited for that. So if people are interested, follow us on the socials, and yeah, we're down for more ideas. And these are just some last parting thoughts about Babylon 5. I know, so Ethan, you're a big Trekkie, right? I think we've all watched some amount of Star Trek.
I've been known to watch a Trek.
I never watched
I am
Babylon
also an
5.
enormous Star Trek fan.
I never really got past Babylon 3, but I really wanted to finish it.
I think my answer would surprise most people.
What is that?
I'm not gonna.
Are you a 5 head?
We don't have enough time.
So next time we'll talk about Babylon 5, and I think that will be in January.
And by that I mean we're going to be talking about Farscape.
Oh man, Farscape.
Muppets.
Okay.
By the way, these tattooed alien teens, these masks they look like torture masks. They look like what you see. Was that movie Funny Games?
Yeah.
Where they do the home invasion. These
horrible.
Look like the tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills. These look like what you would like the mask that people would wear when they home invade you.
On that note,
coming next to the Sometimes Kingdom.
Subcultural karate turtles.
Yeah.
We're gonna end the stream, guys. Thank you for this, Chatty. This is just a random. Yeah, thanks. This is an interseason. Just keeping it going.
Also, shout out to this person's wife who plays jazz.
Yeah. Shout out to this person's wife.
Shout out to your wife.
Whose name is April_Night. April with a Y.
Fantastic.
Sorry, I was thinking of David Guetta. Shout out to his family.
Bye.